Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Above the Rim Rundown, where we run down all things NBA. I am one of your hosts, Memo, and right beside me, I've got Hoops. How you doing?
What's going on, man? I've been doing pretty okay for the most part, I would say. Nothing crazy really going on in general, but I would say getting through in life. So it's been going, I guess. Um, what about you? How have you been, man?
Kind of the same, at least in my actual life. It's the same old, same old. It's the content life that is going to be a lot different moving forward now. With the TikTok ban most likely going through, which is very unfortunate. I guess we could talk more about that towards the end, but yeah, it sucks that it's going to be banned just because we have elected officials that are too old to really understand what's really going on, and I was afraid of some. I don't even know. Like, they're just trying to spread their own propaganda by saying that China is is spreading communism or something. I don't know. It's stupid. It really is. And it's. I would get into it, but this is a basketball podcast, so let's talk about some basketball. And we've got a very exciting episode for this week because, you know, uh, we've been doing a really, really great job doing a rundown of the NBA for every week so far throughout the season. But we're finally going to switch it up, and it kind of good timing too because this week was a very slow week. There was a trade that nobody cares about with the Suns and Hornets. There was a poster by Ja to Wemby that didn't even count. The Thunder blew out the Cavs. It really just not very big or noteworthy moments throughout this week. So it kind of is fitting that today we are going to talk about our top 25 current NBA players in the league midway through this season. We both love making these episodes, and they do pretty well, especially during the summer. Those were our most viewed episodes ever. So we're happy to bring this back. We did this last year. We're gonna do it this year since it is the midway point. And yeah, how are you feeling? Are you excited for this episode?
Yeah, definitely excited for the episode. I think it's always fun when we make our lists and compare and contrast whether it's the similarities or the differences. Um, and then we have our little debates on where man, I can't believe you put this guy this high, or I can't believe you put this guy this low, or you don't even have this guy in your list. Yeah, those are always fun to go through for sure. So definitely some excitement there, and yeah, it's gonna be a fun episode.
Oh yeah, for sure. So before we get into the list and maybe some honorable mentions, I do want to ask you, what was your mentality going through this and trying to make these lists? It was fully based off the season? Is there projection going on where you're assuming things are gonna get better for this player? What was your mindset?
I think it was a little bit of current state of mind, and then maybe for some of them some projections. But I think overall it was more current state of mind than projections that I based off of for my list, but definitely a little bit of a blend of both. Um but what about for you? Would you say projections, current state of mind, a little bit of a mix, or how did you do it?
I guess similar to you, a little bit of mix. I have a feeling I might have projected others more, certain players more than others. And maybe I have some controversial projections in there, but that's what I do. I try to stir the pot a little bit. I throw everybody off. So, but yeah, I had a similar uh mind state, I guess, going into this. But yeah, I guess we could just jump into this and go over some honorable mentions. Who were some players that you were thinking about adding to the list but ended up being cut?
Yeah, honestly, there were a lot. Also, honestly, like 25 is a good amount of players for a top player ranking list, but like there's also going to be a lot of really good players that are just going to miss the cut because like 25 is like a good amount but also not a lot at the same time, especially when you realize that one NBA team roster is only 12 to 15 players. So this is like not even two full rosters of the entire league. So yeah, definitely some tough cuts towards the end, I think. But I think there's five guys I would like to mention as like honorable mentions. So first guy as an honorable mention, Kyrie Irving. So I feel like if it was a top 30 list, for sure he would be on it. At the end, I honestly did have a little bit of a struggle, like who should I put and who should I leave off? Like it's always like that towards the end. But I think the reason why he ultimately didn't make the cut for me is because one, he is aging right now, and two, obviously in the playoffs he did have a little bit of inconsistency. Like he'll have several ups, but then he'll also have several downs. And I think that ultimately was partially the reason why the Mavs ended up losing against the Celtics in five. I'm not blaming it all on Kyrie, but I'm just saying like partial factor was the inconsistency there. Anyhow, next player I have as an honorable mention, Domantas Sabonis. He is obviously a really good big man in the league. Once again, which we've mentioned so many times in the past, he's like the one notch down of Jokic. So like the Charmeleon, versus the Charizard. Ultimately, I just didn't have him on this list due to the fact that, well, one, there were so many other good players. It was just tough to rank him ahead of some of these other guys. But two, I feel like sometimes maybe a little bit of inconsistencies too. I mean, like not really his fault, but like the Kings team, I feel like with the roster they have, they should like be a sure playoff team, but they like I guess at the moment they're slowly climbing up the ladder, but like they were at like the bottom of the West for a while. I feel like yeah, it's a little bit tough there. But another player that I have as an honorable mention that honestly could have been on this list, Zion Williamson. So partially the reason why I didn't have him on this list is because of his inability to stay on the floor. Now, when he is on the floor, obviously we've seen what he could do. The problem is he hasn't really been on the floor much aside from like last season, actually playing a good amount of games. But obviously another issue is like his weight issues and like seemingly like a lack of effort and dedication issues. Like we mentioned what happened in Philly last week. It's I think it's more about like lack of ability and sometimes lack of dedication. Ultimately had me say I think these other guys were more worthy to be on the list than him. Um, Another guy that I had as an honorable mention that honestly was probably like right on the edge and you can argue should have been on the list, honestly. And I wouldn't be shocked if you had him on your list. Um, Paulo Banchero, I had just barely missing it. And I guess partially the reason why I missed it. Now, if we're talking about like current state of mind, he's obviously up and rising. I think I partially left him off because he did miss some time earlier this season, which isn't really his fault, but yeah. Point blank is I think he easily could have and really could climb up the ladder into this list. But at the moment, I just left him off. And then last guy I'll mention is honorable mention, which I also had right on the edge, Scotty Barnes. I think also he was also a tough cut. I think that the two guys that really were like last minute decisions of make or miss are really Scotty and Paulo. And ultimately, I think some of these guys that I just barely put ahead of them were because they were a little bit more polished in the league. Wasn't really the only reason why these guys missed it. But Scotty, not really much needed to be said. I mean, like rookie year, great. Sophomore year was a little bit of a down year, and since then he's been back to the up and rising potential that we all thought he would be when we saw him in his rookie year. So yeah, ultimately speaking, there were just a few guys I thought were more polished, but I think these guys easily could climb into the top 25 maybe next year, or if we do like a maybe next season they could be there, or maybe even like if we were to do a version of the episode at the end of the season, which we probably won't, but like let's pretend like at the end of the season these players say to minds, I think there's a good chance Scotty and Paulo could make it. But at this moment, I just included a few more polished veterans at the end. But anyhow, those would be my honorable mentions. Once again, listing Kyrie Irving, Domantas Sabonis, Zion Williamson, Paul Banchero, and Scotty Barnes. So, Memo, I'll now turn the table to you.
Yeah, you have a good list there. Some of the players did make my list. I won't spoil, but yeah, for the honorable mentions we have in common, Kyrie was a tough cut. I ended up cutting him, mostly due to injuries. Like he was out for a good chunk, and then when he came back, he had some great games, but he also had some stinkers. So he's not the most consistent at the moment, and I feel like the 25 I do have are far more consistent. So Kyrie was a tough cut. I wasn't even thinking about Scotty, but when you said Scotty Barnes, I'm like, oh, he is like really really good. I love Scotty. He was injured for a good amount too, and his team like really sucks. Even though that's kind of the goal for them, so that kind of you know pegs him down a bit. But yeah, Scotty's great. Uh, who else? Oh, someone I really considered was Franz Wagner, and if he wasn't injured, I probably would have snuck him in there with how like amazing that run was when Paulo was out. But since he's currently injured, and I'm still not entirely sure when his timetable is, I ended up not putting him in, even though he probably deserves to be there. And those were like my really like deserving honorable mentions that I felt like could have made the list, but I just didn't add them. I will say, compared to the last time we've done this, I had a lot of players that dropped out. Like, I'm saying like there's a lot here that I dropped out. I don't know if I should say them, because it might like spoil stuff.
I
But
mean, I think maybe a good way to go is don't say it yet, and then maybe after reveal at the end, if you want to mention it, then we could do that. It'll be like, now that we revealed our lists for this year, we see quite a few differences from last year, and then maybe you can list the
okay,
guys that
we
didn't
could
make it.
we could do that. We could do that. Um, okay, so I guess that's all of our honorable mentions. Anything you want to talk about, like in regards of my honorable mentions, or should we get into this?
Um, I think not a whole lot, honestly. Aside from, I didn't really think of Franz, honestly. Like, definitely up there. I didn't necessarily think of him as top 25, but that was a sneaky, um, good honorable mention, honestly. Aside from that, not much, honestly. I feel like the guys you listed were pretty reasonable for honorable mentions. And I wouldn't say any of them are like too crazy that you're left off the list. So yeah, overall, not a bad list for honorable mentions.
All right, sounds good. So I guess we could reveal our first five. So the 25 through 21 spots. So we're gonna do that right now. Gotta go to the doc, copy and paste, and I put mine in. You put yours in, and okay. You know what? Not too bad. Not too bad. So, Hoops, would you like to go over your list?
Yeah, I'll go over mine. At number 25, I got Damian Lillard. At number 24, I got Jimmy Butler. At number 23, I got Trey Young. At number 22, I got De'Aaron Fox. And at number 21, I got Tyrese Maxey.
All right, and
Um,
then
Now, yeah, you go ahead. Yeah, I was gonna ask, like, should we explain or should we like just list them and then explain
yeah,
later,
let's
or we talk
list
about?
let's list them, and then we could discuss further. So for my 25, I have Alperen Sengun, 24 Jalen Williams, 23 John Morant, 22 Damian Lillard, and 21 Devin Booker. So we currently have only one player in common, which is Damian Lillard. You have him at 25. I have him at 22. And I think he deserves to be on the list for sure. He's definitely bounced back this season. The scoring is pretty great. He's meshing well with Giannis, so I think this is a good area to put him.
I agree. Yeah, I had a little bit of a difficulty deciding between like who I should put first between Jimmy and Dame, and it was like so conflicted, honestly, because like at this very moment in time, especially knowing like all the drama that Jimmy's causing in Miami, if you're asking me which player I'd rather have on my team, I think the answer would be Dame. But then like you talk about players' peaks in playoff play, for example. We all know what Jimmy is capable in the playoffs. And that was really what had me just barely put Jimmy over Dame at the end because of like peak playoff play. Now, I do know that was injured last year and we didn't get to see playoff Jimmy last year. And this year, he's just not been seeing the floor much. And then obviously, I'm sure you know, but like tonight, shall we say, Friday night, Jimmy came back from his 7 game suspension, and he did not look like he wanted to be there at all. Um, yeah, they did the Heat starting lineup, and Jimmy was like, "Just get me out of here, please." And then his post game interview, not sure if you saw that, but he was asked a lot of questions about like um, after reflection, do you think there's a chance that you could change your mind about wanting to be here or not? And so he just answered no comment. Like I can't talk about this matter. But deep down, I don't think he wants to. And then there was also another thing. He said there's a lot of talking in the building from everyone except from me. And then he said, but the truth will be out soon. So yeah, it's safe to say he just doesn't want to be here, be there in Miami, and it looks like his ideal destination is the Suns. But yeah, back on topic. I mean, obviously we were talking about Jimmy, but like back on topic to this list. The reason why I just barely put Jimmy over Dame despite the current state of mind was because of like knowing the abilities at peak playoff play. Jimmy could be clutch. But the reason why he's also this low is because of the current state of mind as well. So that's partially reasons of where I have those two on the list. Um, Number 23, Trey Young. So I think that you can for sure argue Trey should be higher. But ultimately, I think that this is like a pretty okay spot to put him. Um, well, ultimately, I'll let you be the judge when you see my full list. But I will say like I did have like a sequence of like guards where I like kind of had tricky orders that I had to come up with. Like, which guy do I think is the best, second, third, and fourth? And a lot of them were close calls. So yeah, there's that. Um, yeah, I just put Trey here. I think that he is obviously has his clutch moments, really good deep ball player, and obviously his defense not the greatest, but overall he's still a player that's really good and really fun to watch. Right above him, De'Aaron Fox. Now, part of me also had difficulties here saying like who I should put first between De'Aaron and Trey. Ultimately, I just thought De'Aaron because like I feel like with his game, he's a little bit more consistent with like his nightly play and numbers. Obviously, Sacramento, they are up and rising now, but like the team like has been not necessarily in the best state of mind for much of the time within the last 2 seasons, and it is clearly not even because of De'Aaron. That guy always does his job. The team just has to show up, and they're getting there. But definitely worthy of being on the list here. And right above him, I have Tyrese Maxey. And I think that the thing about Tyrese is obviously last year he had a breakout season. And this season he is once again doing very good. And like obviously Philadelphia is struggling mightily this year. And it's just because of injuries, honestly. Like Tyrese is doing his job. He's averaging 26 points a game this season on 42% field goals. Pretty efficient. So Tyrese Maxey made my list for several reasons. And he is one of the few bright spots on this struggling Philly team this year. But those are my players from 25 to 21. I will now turn over to Memo, whether you want to, I guess, do thoughts on my list first or go over your list.
I'll go over your list since we're talking about it. And Tyrese Maxey, I actually don't have on my list, but now double checking his stats, he averages 26 points, decent field goal percentage, 3.5 rebounds, 5.8 assists. Again, as you said, one of the few bright spots there. In Philly, I believe, I'm double checking. Yeah, he's second in the league for steals per game with 2.1. So he has decent stats. I think he's also up there with like minutes played per game, something like that. They're like really running everything through him. So I could see an argument of him being in the top 25. Someone that I don't see an argument though for a top 25 spot is actually Jimmy Butler. Not only because of the drama going on, him not wanting to be there, and him not acting like he wanted to be there today, but he's been doing that throughout a good chunk of the season. And his stats show how much less he cares. Right now, he's only averaging 17.6 points per game, 5 rebounds, 4.6 assists. Like, the shooting is, the points per game is much lower than what we are accustomed to for Jimmy Butler. It's to the point where now Tyler Hero is the offensive engine there for Miami. So Jimmy Butler is one of the many players that fell off for me and that didn't end up going on my list. So when you were arguing Dame over Jimmy Butler, I thought it was like a no-brainer. Dame should be over Jimmy Butler. But I understand, like, there's always playoff Jimmy and stuff that people like hope to see again. And so I get that part, but at this very moment, I don't think he's a top 25 player. Um, and then Trae Young, De'Aaron Fox, both pretty interchangeable, I guess. I do have them both a bit higher. Especially Trae Young. I'm low key becoming like a Trae Young stan throughout the years. I don't know what's been going on with me, but yeah, I've been liking Trae Young. I've been liking De'Aaron Fox. They're cool to me. So, uh, I'm just glad you have them both on your list. For a second, I didn't think you would have De'Aaron Fox on your list because Domantas Sabonis wasn't on your list, and they're kind of like 1A, 1B to me. So, um, I thought if you had one of them,
Yeah,
you would have both.
yeah, I do agree. Like they are in a way 1A, 1B, but at the end of the day, I do think De'Aaron is better, honestly.
Yeah, I guess. Like, I think he's a better leader. Sabonis has,
I
like, he can have, like, crazy stat lines, though. With those 2020 games, he gets triple doubles a lot easier than De'Aaron Fox. But Fox is definitely the leader there. So,
for sure.
not too bad. Not too
And
bad.
yeah, honestly, a lot of the points you made were fair. Like obviously in regards to Jimmy Butler, had this very state of mind at the moment. Yeah, that's the why he was at the towards the tail end of the list in the first place. I mean, like I was thinking heavy whether I should include him or some of those honorable mention guys. And then ultimately I just included him because of his like experience and being polished in the league. But yeah, I wouldn't be mad about him not being on your list at all. And then as far as the other guys go, I think a lot of fair points you said too. I mean like you mentioned that pretty much all those other guys are higher on your list, and I'm not mad about that because they're all really good, young, and really fun to watch point guards. So yeah, overall, I think a lot of fair points made on your end.
Alright, cool. So now let me go over my list in a bit more detail. At number five, I have Alperen Sengun. I actually, like last minute, just flipped Jalen Williams and Sengun. I had him at 24, but I think Jalen Williams does a bit more. Like he averages more points, I believe, just barely, but he averages a point more. But it's the defense where J Dub really shines for OKC. He is one of the best perimeter defenders in the league. He really proved that this year so far, and being also the second scoring option there at OKC, and then being the best Western team, I thought he deserved a spot. But yeah, I do have Shagun here because he is playing for an impressive Houston Rockets team. He is kind of like the offensive engine there. As you kind of already talked about the Pokemon evolutions, how Jokic and Sabonis and Shangun, they're all like evolutions of like Charmander, Charmeleon, Charizard. It's the same thing for Shangun, just on a smaller scale. He is a great playmaker at his position. He is a great post player. He could shoot a little bit from mid range. So I thought he deserved a spot, especially with how impressive Houston has been. I threw him in there. John Morant, I'm very curious on your opinions on him because I don't know if you're going to have him higher. I don't know if you cut him entirely. But I do have him at this spot. I believe his numbers are down, but that's not necessarily because he's like worse this year. It's just because like the Grizzlies are doing a great job playing team basketball with Jaren Jackson Jr. Being a lot better offensively. You know, I've always thought he was an overrated player. I didn't think he deserved his All-Star selection or his DPOY like a few years ago. But right now he is playing like the second best player on the Grizzlies. And, you know, Bane is playing well. Zach Edey's back. So everybody there for the Grizzlies is contributing. So although the stats aren't like crazy with like 21.4 points per game, 4 rebounds, 7.5 assists, is no Jokic stat line, but he's still an amazing player. Almost postered Wemby earlier this week. Would have been the poster of the decade. Exciting player to watch. And when the Grizzlies really need him, he'll show out. I know that for a fact. So that's why he's on my list. Maybe people would argue that it's slow. He's low, but I think it's fair. I have Dame in here. I already talked about him. And then Devin Booker, who maybe could be argued higher. I kind of am surprised with his stats because I thought it was worse based off of how bad the Suns were. I expected him to be playing a lot worse, but decent stats: 25.5 points per game, 3.9 rebounds per game, almost 7 assists. So he's still playmaking. He's scoring a good amount over there. Too bad for him that the Suns suck for some reason. So, well, it's because of the lack of defense, and I guess Booker's not the best defender, but nobody on that Suns team is a good defender. So, yeah, he dropped a bit from last time, but still a top 25 player in my opinion. So yeah, what are your thoughts on my group right here?
Yeah, overall, so I will say this, Shangoon and J-Dub were for sure considerable players. Ultimately, I just, once again, just listed a few of the more polished players. But those guys are sneaky good additions, honestly. Like Shangoon is one notch down of Sabonis, and he is a Charmander, so like he's up and rising. Rockets are having a good year, so that's a sneaky good ad, honestly. And then J Dub, obviously we know what he's doing for OKC, really good wing, 3-and-D. Offense is really good, and his defense is also very underrated. So also a good ad that I would argue he could have been on the list also for me. John Morant for sure worthy of being on the list. I have him a little bit higher than you do, but yeah, nonetheless, for sure, just glad you have him on your list because yeah, we all know John Morant being on the Grizzlies available versus not available is a huge difference with how bad the Grizzlies were last year. In the few games he played, did good, won almost all games, 5-1. And this year he comes back and the team is at the top of the conference. So yeah, it's safe to say John Morant is still atop of the elite, and his team impact is very good up there. Dame, obviously we've mentioned already how he is like a clutch player also a lot of the times at the end, making clutch shots, whether it's like in the playoffs hitting those clutch threes against Houston and OKC, or like his underrated scoop layup against the Kings last year. It's just Dame time is a real thing, so worthy of being on the list for that reason. And Devin Booker, I do have him higher than you do, but I could definitely see why he would be this low. And yeah, he definitely did. I think he definitely has taken like a little bit of a step back this season. Not to say that he's not a good player, he's still a good player. Suns have just been losing a lot. And obviously in the beginning of the season, they did good when they were fully healthy. When KD was out, they would lose pretty much every game. Now that he is back, they're still not playing good. And a huge reason is because of the lack of defense, as you pointed out. But at the end of the day, Devin Booker obviously could be on the list because of the capabilities he has overall. So yeah. So point blank is Shangoon and J Dub were the only ones on your list that I didn't have on my list, but easily a point could be argued for those guys. So not mad about them, honestly.
All right, cool. I guess this is a good time to move on to the top 20. We'll go 20 through 16, and we're going to reveal it right now. All right, and I'll tell you right now some of the players you've already talked about are on this tier for me. So let me copy and paste. Alright. Oh,
Okay. We have quite a few differences.
Oh boy. Oh boy. Okay.
And yeah, we have quite a few differences.
Yeah,
All right,
we
I can
do.
go over mine first.
Okay.
So at number 20, I have Tyrese Halliburton right above Tyrese Maxey. So Tyrese there. Um, Number 19, I have Bam Adebayo. Number 18, I got John Morant. Number 17, I got Kawhi Leonard. And at number 16, I got Jaylen Brown.
Alright. For me, at number 20, I got Domantas Sabonis. 19, De'Aaron Fox. 18, LaMelo Ball. 17, Cade Cunningham. And 16, Trae Young. And I'll be honest, right out of the gate, 4 of those players that you have on your list are not on my list. And we already know that John Morant.
I wonder who.
We already know John Morant's on my list already. I have him lower, but the other 4, to me, they all fell off in one way or another. But I'll have you make your explanation before I tell you why I don't have them on my list.
Okay. First off, fair. I think that a lot of these guys did fall off. And I think I guess I can just point out to you as well. There's also a few guys from your list that I didn't have on my list either. But like the point can be easily made that those guys are worthy. So like I'm not necessarily mad about it, and I'll talk more about my exact feedback later after you reveal your reasons. But back to my list and my reasons. So Tyrese Halliburton, obviously he started the season really slow. A lot of people were like questioning like what happened to this guy. He just completely lost his mojo. Um and so forth. But then recently, he started getting his groove back. And obviously, the Pacers started winning. And Tyrese is looking like his old self again. And I am definitely happy about that because it's no secret I am a Tyrese Halliburton fan. It was tough seeing his struggles early on in the season. Granted, he still has a little bit of inconsistency issues, but overall, I think he is slowly but surely getting back to Tyrese we know. So that is why I have him on my list here. Um Bam Adebayo, so the reason why I have him on my list is because he is still one of the elite premier defenders in the league. Um Now I think for sure his numbers haven't necessarily been as flashy this season as previous seasons, but due to his defensive abilities and still abilities to go on scoring bursts as well on offense, I had to put him here. So that's why I have Bam on my list. So right above him, I have Ja Morant. And yeah, already mentioned some of the reasons when you talked about him on your list. His impact is undeniable. Him, he makes the Grizzlies so much better when he is present, and he makes his teammates better. And he's obviously also really fun to watch. So that's why I have John Morant on the list. Um, Kawhi Leonard. Now this is one where like I think it's for sure arguable that he should be lower, simply due to the fact that he is just not very available. Now, obviously, last year we have seen his abilities when he was relatively healthy for the most part, but his lack of dependability is definitely a little bit of red flag. And so I'm not necessarily mad at you for excluding him from your list. But the reason why I have him on my list is because when he is on the floor, he is still capable of doing really good things. So I have him there. And then Jaylen Brown, yeah, I will admit I haven't really been following him too closely this season because, like, I honestly, I just, aside from like looking at the scores, I don't really care to follow the Celtics because I don't like them.
Fair.
But yeah, but I wouldn't be shocked if his numbers went down. Honestly, I guess the reason why I have him here is because like he had a pretty good playoff run and he just won Finals MVP and Eastern Conference Finals MVP. But yeah, I'm honestly not mad at you for excluding him and mentioning his step back because honestly, true, he did have a step back. So yeah, um those are the reasons why I have these guys on my list.
Okay. Jaylen Brown, I I don't believe I put him in any of my top 25 lists in the past. So in a way, it's not a step back because he was never there for me to begin with. But that's probably the Celtics hater inside me doing that. Um, I'll say his percentages are lower than usual. Um, but he's averaging around the same amount of points, same amount of rebounds, a little better assist wise. But looking through his like last like 10ish games, he's been very inconsistent. He had a 10-point game, 16-point game, 14-point game, 12-point game sprinkled in there. So I can see why he would be here. I'm surprised it's this high, but I could see an argument for Jaylen Brown. I also could see an argument for Kawhi Leonard if we're like projecting to the max. At the moment, he's only played a few games, right? He's only played 4 games at the moment. It's just 12.3 points per game, 3 rebounds per game, 1 assist per game. Only 21 minutes per game. So nothing crazy, but they're just slowly rolling him in, and I know that the fires affected his family, so he had to be out again because of that. So I can see a world where, like, in a month, Kawhi Leonard is playing great basketball. Not like prime Kawhi Leonard basketball, but like still really good basketball, and will be hopefully available for the Clippers for the postseason. I could see that happening. But this is like a major projection because, he's always out, always injured. So that's like we'll see. But yeah, I could see an argument for those two. And maybe Tyrese Halliburton as well. I didn't put him on my list because the start of the season was rough for him. But, he's coming back a little. His stats are still worse than last year. He's averaging 18 points per game, which is 2 less than last year. So not a big deal, but from a superstar, we would want him to be definitely above 20 points per game. A little less rebounds, 2 less assists. So the field goal percentage is a little lower, but he's slowly coming back to it. So if we're gonna project again, I could see an argument of him being on the list, like just barely. But like I wouldn't put him this high. But I could see an argument. Bam though, I really don't see it. Like he's only averaging 15.9 points per game. This is the worst since the 2019-2020 season. The field goal percentage is low, especially as a center, only 45.6%. 3-point percentage is at 28.3%. 7 point. Oh, actually, the rebounds aren't too bad. Only, I guess he's not a shot blocker either. He's a good defender. He's still a good defender. Just blocks isn't his thing. It has never been his thing. But it's the offensive side of his game that's really, really lacking. And, it's been lacking, but his defense kind of made up for it, and he always was able to do enough offensively. But right now, it's really not looking good for him offensively. So that's why I didn't put him on the list. But I guess I can go over why I have my other players on my list, unless you want to rebuttal really quickly.
Not as much as a rebuttal as I guess understanding, shall I say. I mean, yeah, what you said about Kawhi is fair. About the at the moment hasn't played much, but you can see him being on this list as time goes by, and maybe he'd be healthy in the playoffs, which I'm honestly not necessarily holding my breath on because it seems like he always gets hurt either in or right before the playoffs. But it would be cool if he will be able to play though. Um, And then Tyrese, I know you said the same thing. You could see him getting on the list, just not at the moment. Fair. We already talked about Josh, so we can skip on him. Bam, yeah, I could honestly see why. Because his offense has gone down. His defense is still good, but also a step taken back. And then obviously Jaylen Brown. For you, technically not a step down because you never had him on your list. But I guess me, just a slight edge up due to his playoff performance, even though he is having a lesser year so far this season. Haha. Yeah. And the Celtics have been losing quite a bit lately, so that's also good. They lost against the Raptors early this week for all where you want to know. Yeah. Anyhow, a lot of the points you made were very reasonable, honestly. So I could see why you would say maybe some of these guys, or the majority of these guys, aside from Ja, were not worthy of being on the list right now at this moment. But yeah, those are mostly just my I guess reactions to your comments. And I think it is good for Memo to now go over his list.
Alright, I'll start at number 20 with Domantas Sabonis. He's leading the league in rebounds with 14.1 rebounds per game. Interestingly, he is also leading the league in 3-point percentage. He doesn't shoot a lot of threes, but he's averaging 47.8% from three. So that's very interesting. Only almost 50%, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, his other stats 20
is crazy.
Yeah, 20.6 points per game, 6.3 assists per game. He is a double machine. He gets triple doubles occasionally. Pretty good playmaker for his position. He just can't play defense. I think I talked about this last week about how the lack of defense from him hurts the Kings, but still, he is a really good center overall. De'Aaron Fox averages 26.3 points per game, 5.2 rebounds per game, 6.1 assists per game. And I mentioned earlier, he's more of the leader of the team in my opinion. So that's why I have him slightly over Domantas Sabonis. Next up, LaMelo Ball. we're getting closer and closer to the top, so I'm going to assume. I think you already said this. So LaMelo didn't make your list, right?
Yeah, it was a I will say that was a tough call there. Like if you're talking about the current state of mind of the season, I think very very arguable point that LaMelo should be on the list. I think that maybe part of the reason why I didn't necessarily think of him on the list is well, I guess for one, I don't really watch the Hornets much, so I forget about him sometimes. And part of it is probably because he is injured a lot in previous seasons. This season he's been relatively healthy, so definitely happy about that. Um, but yeah, I had him off my list. And honestly, now that you mention it, I think that he's worthy of being on it for sure.
Yeah, I think so. He averages 29.5 points per game, which is actually the fourth most points per game throughout the entire NBA. He is a really good, I guess not really good, but a good playmaker as well, since he averages 7.5 assists per game. The turnovers is where it kind of kills him. He almost averages 4 turnovers a game. That's kind of high. And the percentages could be better from three. But, he's such a fun player to watch. He is electrifying. Those one-legged threes are cool to see. And yeah, he's still like a really good player offensively. Could be a little careless though, so I guess he could be lower on my list. But I guess since I'm such a fan of his game, I have him this high. Next, I have Cade Cunningham. The first time I've ever had him on my list, and that's mostly because the biggest reason why is that now Detroit is winning games, and since Detroit is winning games and he's still improving as a player, he ended up making my list this high. He averages 24.4 points per game, 6.5 rebounds per game, 9.4 assists per game, which is top 3 in the league. Very good overall. So I am there. And then Trae Young, I'm the Trae Young guy now. He is a very exciting player to watch with those handles, with those deep threes. He averages 23.1 points per game, 3.4 rebounds per game, 11.9 assists. He is leading the entire league in assists per game. And that's where, although the points per game might be lower, he's really this year trying to get his teammates involved. And I think because of his playmaking is why the Hawks are looking better. Several players on the Hawks are looking better. Jalen Johnson might be an all-star this year because of Trae Young's ability to get him some easy shots. So, yeah, that's why I have him on the list. What are your thoughts on this group for me?
Yeah, overall not a bad list. I will say that I am kind of shocked some of these guys are up here this high. Um, which is not necessarily a bad thing because they're all good players. But I'll start with the bottom, I guess. So Sabonis, obviously I mentioned him as a slightly didn't make the cut for me, but I can definitely see why he's on your list. As we mentioned so many times. And like when I saw that Şengün was on your list, I just assumed that the bonus was on your list because he's the second evolution versus the first evolution. But yeah, um, definitely understandable why you'd have him there. De'Aaron, obviously, I have him on my list just a little bit lower, so it's fair that you have him higher because we know his impact. LaMelo, obviously, I mentioned that I didn't have him on my list, but he's definitely worthy of being on this list. I am a little bit shocked that you have him this high, not gonna lie. Um, and then obviously I know you mentioned that you are a really big fan of his game. And I am a really big fan of his game too. Um, I will say that I was kind of shocked hearing that because I think before you weren't really a big fan of LaMelo. Is that correct or not necessarily?
I don't even know, man. It's probably LeVar Ball annoying me so much that I like
Probably.
dismiss the Ball family in general.
Yeah,
But
honestly, that's understandable. Yeah. Also, really cool that we were able to see LaMelo and Lonzo play against each other for the first time
right,
in
right.
like 4 years or 3 years on Friday. Um, and then I guess briefly talking about it, because they're very familiar with their games, so Lonzo like predicted a lot of Melo's plays, and at the end, unfortunately, Lonzo got called for a foul, and the Hornets barely won by two. Anyways, back on topic to this list.
Don't forget though,
Go ahead.
Jello was in the crowd. He was watching
Yeah.
with the new deal he has. He's looking good, looking a lot richer now. So
Uh,
shout
he
out
he
to
was
him.
Yeah, shout out to Jello as well. He was stripped out on the sideline with his like jewelry and all that. It was funny. Um, and deserving, honestly. I mean, I think this guy has found his second day job. We mentioned that. It's really cool. Anyhow, yeah, I think that Melo being on this list is very um reasonable, arguable, and worthy. So I could have easily put him here, honestly. I just somehow, I guess, overlooked him due to the fact that he plays for the Hornets and because he was injured a lot in previous seasons. Cade Cunningham is another guy. Although I do not have him on my list, I think that he's very worthy because he's doing really good this season, and the Pistons are actually winning games. A huge reason is because of him. And obviously, Pistons are like one of the shocker teams this year. We all expected them to be a bottom feeder again, and they're actually winning. So shout out to them for proving it all wrong, and shout out to Cade for being the main reason that they are doing good. And then Trey Young, obviously I have him towards like the tail end of the top 25 list. You have him in a pretty reasonable range, I would say. So and you mentioned like Trey and De'Aaron is very interchangeable, similar to what I said. So the fact that you have him a little bit higher is also reasonable there. So yeah, overall not a bad list. A few guys that I didn't necessarily think of initially, but um sneaky good ones, I think.
Yeah, I felt like a lot of these guards are for sure very interchangeable. So, if you believe like Lamelo should be a lot lower, then like I don't blame you. Uh, but yeah, it was actually tough placing them in order, but I tried my best.
Yeah, and I had that struggle too because like obviously towards like the 20 to like 23 or range, they were like all point guards. So for me, so like it was kind of tricky like who I think is the best second, third, fourth. But yeah, a lot of these guards are definitely interchangeable for sure.
All right, now I think it's time to move on. We're in the top 15. We're gonna reveal our 15 through 11 now. So let's do that. Gotta move this for a second, just so I could copy and paste. Oh, he beat me to it this time. All right, all right.
Yeah, I copied it. um
Okay,
but yeah, I
interesting.
see we have like bit of a different set of players here with one guy that's the same. But yeah, I'll go over my list first. So, at number 15, I have Jalen Brunson. Number 14, I got Devin Booker. And number 13, I got Victor Wembanyama. At number 12, I got Donovan Mitchell, and at number 11, I got Anthony Davis.
All right, and then for me, I have at number 15 Paulo Banchero, 14 Carl Anthony Towns, 13 Donovan Mitchell, 12 Stephen Curry, and 11 Jalen Brunson. And I like to see that we have Donovan Mitchell around the same spot, you a little higher than me. But it makes sense because, he is the best player on the best team in the league, is doing great things. Even though his stats are, I believe, lower than last year, it's similar to Ja,
That's
where
interesting.
uh, they're playing a lot more as a team. He doesn't have to do as much and score as much because he knows he could count on Garland, Evan Mobley to help him out. So, definitely worthy of being around this area for sure. So, I'm glad you have him there too.
Yep, definitely agree there. That yeah, Donovan Mitchell is the best player on the best team record wise. And yeah, he's definitely worthy of being in this range. And I honestly didn't know that his numbers went down from last year to this year. And I thought it was interesting that you mentioned that. But honestly, now that I think about it, since the team is better, he has more options to be more of a contributor. And so he doesn't necessarily have to do as much versus last year when the team was really not even that great, that they barely made the 4 seed, which is honestly still good seeding wise, but yeah. It makes sense now that I think about it that he is doing less on offense and more distributing. So yeah, safe to say Spida worthy of being here. And then yeah, now I can go over the rest of the guys on my list here. So Jalen Brunson, obviously he is the number one option on the Knicks, and he is up and rising. And you can argue that he should be higher. I mean, obviously you have him higher than I do, and ultimately, I think the reason why I have him where I have him is honestly maybe more so due to the fact that I feel like some of these other guys above have either higher ceilings or accomplish a little bit more. Um, not a knock on him. Like Jalen Brunson is definitely arguable for like All Star nod and maybe eventually a potential Team USA candidate. We'll see, but yeah, Jalen Brunson worthy of being on the list. And so next guy, Devin Booker, definitely could argue he should be lower. I would love to put him lower because I'm not a fan of his, but ultimately I put him here because I think that his capabilities is still really good and he could still be a scoring burst when he gets hot. So this is why I have Devin Booker where I have him. Um, Victor Wembanyama. So I assume you probably have him higher,
Yup.
and the reason, yep, but the reason why I do not have him in my top 10 is just because like he's only in year 2. Now you can argue he doesn't really need to do that much to be in the top 10 because of his like freakish body build and capabilities. But the reason why I do have him here, which quite honestly is a big jump already, because like when he was a rookie, like it was arguable to be top 25, but like we thought it was too early at that time. So him being in the top 15, I think is pretty good. But the reason why I do not have him in the top 10 really is just because he's only in his second year. His ceiling is clearly like the sky is the limit for this guy. And I think that he like obviously he already could shoot the ball. Really great defensive player and fun to watch also. if he like builds even further, like man, this guy is gonna be tough and a force to be reckoned with. Especially you give the Spurs more weapons for him to work with. This is gonna be a perennial playoff team for years to come, and maybe could be like another new dynasty era in San Antonio. But Wemby for sure, like even in year two, the only reason why I have him not in the top 10, but he can easily get there like tomorrow even. Anyhow, we already talked about Donovan Mitchell. Number 11, Anthony Davis. Another guy you can argue could be higher in the list. The reason why I have him here really is because there are just a few other guys that I think maybe a little bit more deserving, but yeah, I think 11 is honestly still pretty good for AD. Last season, I didn't necessarily have as much confidence in him before the year due to him missing so many games. Last season, he was pretty healthy. This season, for the most part, he was pretty available. Obviously, he got injured recently and missed a little bit of time, but nonetheless, like AD is, you know how good he is when he is on the floor. One of the top elite defenders, really good on offense. Also, obviously, his three ball is not as good as it was in the bubble when he was in his peak shooting the ball, but like still really good offensively. And so Anthony Davis, I put him where I put him for many of those reasons. So that would be my list from 15 through 11.
Okay, I will say uh Devin Booker. Part of me feels like he should be lower. Maybe that's the hater inside of me. But at least Jalen Brunson should be higher. Jalen Brunson, even though his stats are worse this year than it was last year, he's still averaging more points per game, more assists per game than Devin Booker. And he's doing this for one of the better teams in the league. While Devin Booker, uh, his stats aren't as good, and he's playing for a much worse team. So I would argue Brunson over Booker, but yeah, I do like this Brunson involvement. I guess we have two players in common, kind of. Donovan Mitchell in this tier and Jalen Brunson. I just have him right outside of the top 10. But yeah, Jalen Brunson definitely deserves to be here. He is a scoring machine, and has to do less now that Cat is there, which is good for the team overall. He doesn't have to do too much and exhaust himself. So I'm glad that you have him there. Even though I have him higher, I'm glad you have him around this part. Devin Booker, I already talked about. Victor Wembanyama, I don't care. It's just his second season. I think he's proven that he is like the best shot blocker in the league. He is a insane defender. I guess you could argue he's not the best like post up defender, but definitely like the best help defender in the league. And the way that his offense is so advanced for centers, like he's doing stuff that centers don't usually do, but I think he's paving the way for future centers to come with his ball handling ability, his 3-point shooting ability. He still has a post game somewhat. So he still gets those dunks with ease. I think he should be higher, and I also think Anthony Davis should be higher. This man deserves more respect. You'll see my ranking of him soon, since he's clearly in my top 10. But he is like a top 3 player on both ends of the floor, offense and defense. He is killing it offensively, and defensively, you know that he is one of the best in the league. So I do think Victor and Anthony Davis should be higher, and Devin Booker should be at least lower than Brunson. But other than that, it's not too bad.
Okay, fair points for sure. Um, yeah, I can definitely see where you're coming from there. But aside from that, honestly, not too much I have to say in return. I will let you have at it on your list now.
All right, so number 15, I have Paulo Banchero, which is definitely like projecting a lot because he hasn't played a lot this season. I think he still is under like 10 games this season, which is really low. One of those games, though, he scored 50 points, so that's cool. And his stats in general, although a very small sample size, it's great. 26.9 points per game, 7.6 rebounds per game, 4.8 assists per game. He's killing it throughout the entire box score. And when he's on the floor, he is amazing. He is an incredible player. So I'm assuming now that he's back, he's going to stay on the court and continue to play great. If he doesn't stay on the court, then yeah, this would have aged horribly. But I'm assuming he's gonna stay on the court, and that's why I have him this high. 14, Carl Anthony Towns. Now I don't believe you're gonna have him in your top 10, so I'm actually very surprised that you don't have him on your list, especially since you're more of a believer in Cat than I am. I've always been kind of a Cat hater, but he he has like this is like a renaissance season for Cat. He is playing amazing there in New York, being the big bodega over there with 25.4 points per game, 13.9 rebounds per game. He's second in the league, right behind Domantas Sabonis for rebounds per game. He is shooting the three ball very well as always. And yeah, it's helped Jalen Brunson a lot with the offensive load, being the number two, sometimes the number one guy. I think for like the beginning of the season, he was the guy in New York for a bit, and then Jalen Brunson slowly came back to life. So I believe Cat should be at least on the top 25 list. You might not agree about this like high placement, but I think he has an argument to be in the top 25. I already talked about Donovan Mitchell. Stephen Curry is probably one of my more controversial takes, him being outside of the top 10. And I'll say that, it's been an odd season for Steph. It's for the Warriors in general, but, Steph is not playing as well as he has been. His points per game is a bit lower than usual. His team is doing worse than usual as well. And he's been but he's been inconsistent at times. So he's had some stinkers, some games where he could score more than 10 points. I think he had a 2-point game as well earlier this year. He's starting to become inconsistent. I'm not ready to say he's washed, but he is, going down that timeline. He's not quite Celtics Shaq. He might be Sun Shaq. No, that's too harsh. But he's. I'll be nice. He's Heat Shaq right now. So, definitely no Lakers Shaq, and he's still contributing at a high degree. But there's some inconsistencies that is kind of scary to see right now. So that's why he's no longer in my top 10. And then, yeah, I already talked about Brunson, who's at 11. So what are your thoughts on my list? I know this is probably the most controversial portion of my list. So what are your thoughts?
So, I would say definitely a few shockers here. Like for example, I mean, I'm not necessarily shocked about these guys all being on the list. I will say like the fact that I had Paulo barely missing my list and you have him pretty high. I guess a little bit shocked there, but like as you mentioned, when he is available on the floor, though it is small sample size this year, he did do good things, and so it's understandable you have him as a really big believer. As far as Cat goes, honestly, like I thought about putting him on this list, and honestly, I probably should have because he is having a really great season with the Knicks this year. Honestly, I don't even remember what exactly was the reason I didn't have him on the list. Maybe because of like yeah, I don't know honestly. Maybe it'd be like feeling some of these other guys are more flashy or so forth, but um yeah, I would say that I'm definitely shocked that you put him this high for sure, especially knowing that you mentioned that you're not a Cat fan. So that definitely shocked me as well. But safe to say he's having a really good season. So right now, this very moment, he is playing like a top 15 player. So I could see why you put him there. And then obviously Donovan Mitchell, we've talked about him, similar placements. Steph, I'm for sure shocked that you put him this low. Now obviously you're right. He definitely did take a step back. Um, Not quite where he was the Steph we see before, but still good. Obviously, Warriors started the year hot and they have fell off very fast lately. And we kind of all expected them to fall off sooner rather than later. Maybe not this fast, but nonetheless, yeah, a little bit shocked that you have Steph this low, but I guess understandable. He is having a little bit of down year. And then Jalen Brunson, obviously, I have him a little bit lower than you, and I think it's definitely understandable you have him where you are here. I do remember, I think we did like I think in the off season when we did their point guards list, I had Jalen Brunson higher than Steph, and you thought I was really crazy for that. But now you have Brunson higher than Steph, which is kind of funny how the tables have turned. Um, but it's understandable, honestly. Right now, this moment, I think Brunson does look better. So I can see why you have him higher, honestly. Overall, a few shockers from your list, but I say it's fair because right now, this time, these players are playing like they are at least top 15 worthy.
All right, cool. And yeah, I'm ready for the top 10. Are you?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah, let's do it. Let's go get the lists ready for each other. Um, okay, gonna copy and paste. All right, all right. Um, okay.
Some similarities.
Yeah, there's a good amount of similarities here. Would you like to read your list?
Yeah, number 10, I got Anthony Edwards. Number 9, I got Kevin Durant. Number 8, I got Steph Curry. Number 7, I got LeBron James. And at number 6, I got Jason Tatum.
And for me, I've got at number 10, I also have Anthony Edwards. So I think that's the first one where we both have the same player at the same exact spot. At number 9, that's where I'm going to have Victor Wembanyama. Number 8, I've got LeBron James. Number 7, Anthony Davis. And number 6, Kevin Durant. So I guess the ones that we have in common is Anthony Edwards at the exact same spot, and LeBron James. Oh, and Durant. Durant's similar too. So that's good to know. I'll have you explain your guys first before I keep yapping.
Yeah, so Ant being at number 10, honestly, I would have put him higher for sure, but I feel like this season, not necessarily as high as he was last season. And obviously Timberwolves also took a step back. They were the third seed last year. and now they're like hardly in the playoff picture currently. Granted, it's early in the year, the West is really tight, but yeah, obviously Ant took a little bit of step back, but still really good. So that's the reason why he's in the top 10. Um, Number 9, KD. So could argue he could be higher on this list, but I think the reason why I put him here was a little bit of a step down is due to the fact that obviously he hasn't necessarily been as available recently, but I feel like his game is still really good, but he also has taken like a little bit of a step back, and it's understandable because he's aging. Um, and above him, I have Steph, who is another guy aging and also took a step back this year, but still really good. Just the team also took a step back, and yeah. And then at number 7, I got LeBron. So pretty much I got those three veteran old heads lined up: LeBron, Steph, and KD. Yeah, LeBron, he is still obviously really good, especially now at age 40, proving like father time is nothing to him. But he's definitely fallen off a little bit this year. His numbers are not necessarily as good as they were in previous years. And it's understandable if you turn 40. Yeah, but like the fact that he is still able to put up like really good numbers for his age and be relatively consistent is definitely worthy of him for sure being top 10. And then Jason Tatum at number 6, could argue he should be top 5. There were a few guys I thought were a little bit more worthy, but the reason why I have him number 6, so part of me wanted to put him lower, but then it's like I didn't really think I could. And the reason is because like obviously whether we like him or not, he's his ability to go on like scoring bursts and be the obviously him and Jaylen Brown had a little bit of like the 1A 1B issue. But when it comes to like taking the big shots at late games, Tatum seems to do it more often, and the reason is probably because his capabilities are usually more there. And sometimes it's still very arguable who's 1A, 1B between the two, but I think that Tatum is for sure worthy of being this high because of his peak ability to go on high scoring bursts. And so that's why I have these guys from my numbers 10 to number 6.
Okay. A lot of these we have in similar spots. I guess Curry's the one that like I have much lower. And yeah, part of me understands why he's this high. Like he's Stephen Curry. He's that guy, but at the same time, like he scores a lot less than Durant, than Edwards. Right now, I believe Edwards is a better like 3-point shooter than Curry at the moment, and that's like kind of what Curry does. So, that the defense isn't as good. So, I would argue Curry lower. Obviously, since I have him lower. But yeah, overall it's not too bad. Like Tatum, I don't have on this grouping, but like I have him like I spoiler alert like near number 6, so that's fair. So let me actually go over my guys because I'll also be covering most of your guys as well. Starting at Anthony Edwards, as I mentioned, the 3-pointers, it has elevated his game to me, in my opinion. Like I'm actually in. I thought it was interesting when you said that he kind of took a step back, especially since his team did take a step back. But for me, him as a player, actually, I think he stepped forward. The stats are like basically the same compared to last year. The only thing that's like a big difference is the 3-point attempts, which is he used to attempt like 6.7. Now he attempts 10 threes per game, and the percentage is a lot higher than last year. Last year was 35.7%. Now it's 42.9%. He's a 40% 3-point shooter now, which wasn't necessarily his game in the past. He's mostly known for his driving game, but now he's a 3-point shooter and an elite one at that. So, yeah, I think he elevated his game. I think last year or whenever we did this list before, I had him lower on the list, but because of the addition of the 3-point shot, because he is the leader in the league with 3-pointers made with 175, and because he's still a great offensive player, a decent defender, I ended up boosting him up a little bit for my rankings, which ended up being number 10, just like you. Victor Wembanyama deserves to be in the top 10. He is forced to be reckoned with on both ends, but especially defensively. This man averages like 10 blocks per game, which is insane. He might win Defensive Player of the Year in his second season. He leads the league in total blocks with 137. Walker Kessler is the second guy, and guess how many blocks he has?
So, can you remind me how many Wemby had again?
137.
Okay. I'm gonna guess Walker Kessler has 87.
Actually, not too far off. 80.
Oh, okay.
So he's the number 2 guy, and he's 57 blocks away from Wemby. That's
crazy, man.
That's crazy. And then, as I mentioned earlier, like, his offensive game is insane. Although a lot of people are pissed off that he shoots a lot of threes, when he's making them, you can't stop him. Like, you can't stop Wemby when he's on fire from 3. So that's why I have him this high, right behind Lebron James, Le Pookie, who, still killing it at 40 years old. 23.8 points per game, 7.5 rebounds per game, 8.8 points per game. Very great player. Just overall, I guess the defense is where he's really lacking. Because he's older. So, it's understandable, but yeah, that's why I don't have him higher than Anthony Davis, who I think is officially the best Laker on the team. He averages more points, more rebounds, and is a far, far better defender than LeBron James. I know LeBron is the better facilitator, better playmaker, but I think with everything else, Anthony Davis is doing a lot better than LeBron. So that's why I have him over LeBron. And this high on the list. I think this might be the highest I've ever put Anthony Davis on a top 25 list. So call me a glazer because I'm always rooting for this guy. But yeah, I think he deserves it. Like, he's amazing. So yeah, and then last player, Kevin Durant, aging like fine wine. Like, this dude is insanely good. Offensively, he's scoring 27.1 points per game. He adds in 6.4 rebounds, 4.2 assists per game. He is the best defender on the Suns, which isn't saying much since the Suns have like no good defenders. But still, he knows how to defend. I think that's actually something he's been improving over the years. His defensive ability definitely, in my opinion, has improved at his old age. So It's no Anthony Davis defense, but that offensive game is really where he shines. He does not miss at times, especially from mid range, and to me is clearly the best player for the Suns. So those are my players for this group. Any thoughts before we talk about the top five?
Honestly, I think that the list is very reasonable, and obviously I mentioned obviously like Anthony Edwards, we have him as same exact spot, so not too much explanation needed there. Wemby, I had him a little bit lower, only because he's only in year 2, but easily could be argued for top 10 for capability wise. And then we mentioned LeBron is still really good, but did take a little bit of step back. AD, I could definitely see the argument of him being the better Laker, and I definitely I hope that it is the case going forward, of course, because like at this point, like it's safe to say LeBron's time is nearing the end, and hopefully AD will be the guy leading this team going forward for years to come. I hope. Um, yeah, and he's obviously him being like younger by quite a bit. He should be better, and yeah, obviously in 2019-20 when the Lakers won a championship, Bron and AD were really neck and neck 1A 1B, and at times you can argue that that year AD was better than LeBron. So yeah, um, I think it's better when it's like that, when they're neck and neck, or AD is arguably better than for LeBron to clearly be the number one. Anyhow, very reasonable, honestly. Even though I do have AD a little bit lower, um, I do appreciate the AD love for sure, because obviously we're both Lakers fans and AD fans. I know I've been hard on him in my past rankings at times, but it's more so just due to frustrations of him always being injured, honestly. Still obviously a huge fan. Um KD, obviously, a lot of fair points you mentioned. He is by far the best defender on the Suns, although not saying much because that team is bad on defense. He's still really capable, and for sure easily a top 10 player. But overall, I say not bad for 10 to 6.
All right, that means that we have finally made it to the top five, and for sure, I'm assuming four of our five are the same.
Yeah.
But knowing that Tatum is outside of your top five, I'm guessing I know who's in there for you, and it's gonna cause an interesting discussion for sure.
All right.
So I'm just pasting mine really quickly, and then yeah, okay, okay,
All right.
interesting. So
Yeah.
I read over your list.
Okay. So at number 5, I got Joel Embiid. Number 4, I got Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Number 3, I got Giannis Antetokounmpo. Number 2, I got Luka Doncic. And at number 1, I got Nikola Jokic.
And for me at number five, I got Luka Doncic. Number four, Jason Tatum. Number three, Shea. Number two, Giannis. And number one, Nikola Jokic. So the biggest outlier here is that you have Embiid and I don't. I don't even have him in my top 25. So I guess,
Which is interesting.
yeah, I'll talk about why he's not in my top 25, but would you like to defend Embiid's honor and explain why he is a top 5 player in the league?
Yeah, I'm just gonna be straight up and say reason why I have him this high is due to capability. Now, obviously, this man has not necessarily been on the floor as much these last. I mean, injuries has been an ongoing problem for this guy in his entire career. But the reason why I still have him this high is when he is available, he is still like putting up those numbers. And like, I know that it's not necessarily the same as like his MVP season, but due to capability, I had to put him in top 5. And so then at number 4, Shai. Now you could argue higher, but I feel like just the guys I have above him just have better overall ceilings or really done more in their careers. So that's why I have Shai at 4. Um, so Giannis so the top 3. It's really on the 3 and the 2 that I had a little bit of a toss up on. Giannis number 3. I really thought about putting him number 2, but the reason why I put him number 3 and I put Luka number 2, I think is because of like the current like ceiling state in mind. Now, obviously, like Luka has been injured lately and hadn't been on the floor as much as of late. But I feel like if we're talking about like the future trajectories of these guys, right now Giannis is looking better this season. But if we're talking about like the long run, I think that Luka might have the edge there. And he's like younger by like several years, like 6 years, I think, something like that. So I feel like if anything, he should. But those are the reasons why I have Giannis 3, Luka 2, and sitting number 1. Without a doubt, Nikola Jokic is still the number 1 player in the league. Nuggets having a down year, Jokic still having an up year, and his playmaking through the roof. And many people thought that addition of Russell Westbrook would really hurt this team. Now, from a winning standpoint, they haven't necessarily been doing the greatest, but his fit with his team has honestly been really good. Like, Russ has been fitting in the Nuggets system really well. He has been doing much more good than bad, and you can even argue low key that Jokic and Russ is the better 2-man punch duo than Jokic and Jamal. Like, based on the impact that's been going on lately. I mean, that would have sounded really crazy if you said that like in the off season. But right now, it's looking like that. And Jamal Murray is having like a down year. Like last year, I believe I had Jamal Murray as an honorable mention in top 25. This year, I couldn't do that because of his down year he's having. But the point blank is, despite the Nuggets' struggles, Jokic is still doing his job and doing his thing. So these are my players in the top 5.
All right, I gotta talk about Embiid first, because I guess this might be the biggest shocker that I don't have him on the list in general, and it's mostly because he has been injured for most of the season. He's only played 13 games, which I guess is still more than Paulo. You may be arguing, but he's been playing worse than Paulo on the floor. He's been playing a lot worse than he has been throughout the last like 5 years. Last year he averaged 34.7 points per game. Right now he's averaging 24.4 points per game. He's averaging 10 less points per game. 10. That's a huge margin, and his stats across the board is a lot less. His rebounding is less. Assists are less. Steals, blocks, it's all a lot lower. He's still trying to like come back and recover and try to be that same player he was, but at the moment he's still not there. And because he's always injured, I really don't believe he's gonna stay on the floor for the rest of the season. I think he will be in and out of the lineup throughout the rest of the season. So to me, if not only you're not going to be playing, but you're going to be playing a lot worse than you have been, then yeah, I don't think you should be in the top 5. If you want to argue 25, 24, sure, why not? But at the moment, I don't have him on my top 25 list. So yeah, the stats are just insanely worse than before. Still like decent, but not Joel Embiid level. So that's that. And yeah, most of the other people are on your list. So actually, before I talk about my list, anything you want to say about my opinion on Embiid?
Yeah, for sure. And I must say, definitely shocking that you don't even have him in your top 25. Like, yes, his numbers have dropped off quite a bit. I mean, like going from 36 to 24 or whatever it is quite a drop off. However, you mean to tell me that like Shengun, J-Dub, um, let's see who else. Um, Sabonis, Booker, who's having a little bit of a down year, um, and so forth, are all better than Joel Embiid right now.
Yes.
I don't know about that, man. Like, I honestly think that like the fact that you don't even have him in top 25 is crazy. Now I know this is not the video, but would you have at least had Embiid in like your top 30 if it was five more players, or probably still no?
Um, I I don't know. You you could argue
This is
it's.
actually really this is actually really funny, not gonna lie.
Well, it's like he's barely played,
It's like
and when he's on the court, he's a shell of his former past. Like he's hasn't really done much to help the Sixers, and that's why
like
they're so bad.
I'm gonna say this. I think that not having him in the top five is reasonable, and maybe top 10 just because of his current state of mind. I feel like anything else than that is like, I don't know, like you're just, I mean, I get it. At this current moment in time, things are not necessarily looking good. He's hardly played, but like, you mean to tell me that you're just gonna like erase everything that he has done in the recent years
Well,
just
this
because of
is
like,
a current ranking, right? It's not an all time ranking. Obviously, like
well, yeah,
Şengün would be a lot lower all time than Embiid, but at this moment, one of these centers is on top of the Western Conference, and is the best player for that team, while the other is not playing as well as he has been and is losing a lot of games in a worse conference, and his seeding is a lot lower.
and I get that, but like, let's say for example, you were given the like ability, who would you rather have on your team, Embiid or Şengün? Who would you pick in that case?
I might pick Şengün. He's younger. He uh, is a great
That's interesting.
playmaker,
I mean, like the
scorer.
younger part is fair. Like the you would rather pick him on your team part is interesting.
He's not as injury prone, right? The highs with Embiid is super high, but his lows are super low. I'm gonna need some consistency, and that's what Şengün can provide for me. Especially since like in this like hypothetical scenario, like I could build around Şengün, and he might not even be like the number one guy. But he could
I
be
was
an
gonna
important
say though, like
piece.
um, I was gonna say though, would you trust Şengün as your number one guy?
Maybe because I don't trust Embiid as my number one guy. Like the Sixers have been trusting this guy for like 10 years to be the number one guy, and never gone past the never made it to the Eastern Conference Finals. Due to his injury, due to some poor playoff performances. Like there's a reason why we call him Big Embiid, not Big Embiid, Big Harden at times because of the choking in the playoffs. Um, like he's really good when he's healthy on the floor, but he's like never healthy and never on the floor.
Hmm. Well, I guess only time will tell how this argument ages. But like I guess if we're talking about like current state of mind, I understand like the he's not on the floor much. Kawhi hasn't been on the floor much. Granted, you did mention about the Paulo thing. Despite him not being on the floor much, you still have a lot of faith in him,
Well, I think
and that's also
he's
understandable.
the reason why I have him on the floor and not the other two is because I am pretty sure he's gonna stay on the floor. He has not really had a history, although he's very young into his career, where he's injury prone. At least not yet. Hopefully never. But Kawhi and Joel are known for missing a lot of games throughout the season.
Yeah. Yeah, as far as the injury history goes, that's understandable. But yeah, we'll see how this ages. I will say definitely very unexpected argument from your end. I did not expect. Um, but that's all I really had to say. I think that this gave us a little fun argument for once in this episode.
Yeah,
So I think it's good for the content, honestly.
yeah, it could work
Um,
as I would say TikTok, but that's going away. But like a short, I might make
oh
this into
man,
a short, uh,
yeah, go
and
for it.
people might
It'd
be
be
pissed
funny.
off at me, especially the Philly fans. And you know how Philly fans can get at times.
Oh yeah, they're gonna flame you so hard,
But
man. Be ready.
I'm standing on business. I'm not taking Embiid as over Şengün at this moment. There's no way that's happening.
Okay, we will see how this ages, but that's really all I gotta say. In rebuttal to what you mentioned of Embiid, you can go over your top five now.
Okay, I'm surprised we had such a passionate argument
Yeah,
over
I think
Embiid
it's
of
just
all
because
players.
I know, and it's like I'm not a crazy Embiid fan, and neither are you. But, like, it's just shocking. That's all.
Yeah, I wouldn't even call myself a hater, but right now I guess I am hating. But I like to hate sometimes. I think that's
I will
something
say,
people will catch on to me. Like I hate sometimes for the fun, for the
I will
sport.
say, and yeah, I will say Embiid kind of does give people a lot of valid reasons to hate on him. Like missing a lot of games, sometimes a little bit of a bad attitude, and so forth. So it's kind of reasonable that even for you to have some of the hate, somewhat understandable, honestly.
Yeah, I try to call it how it is, at least in my opinion. So right now, I don't think he's top 25. Maybe next year though. Maybe next year. There's always next year.
Maybe next year.
Uh,
Yeah, we'll see.
maybe next year he's number two. We'll see. Uh, but never over my king Jokic, which I'll talk about him soon. But now finally
I
talking
agree.
about my top five. At number five, I have Luka Doncic. You have him at number two. I have him lower because of injury. Even though, like, I guess sticking with my same argument, maybe I should have him even lower than five because he's injured again, which he's never really been like this injury prone before throughout a season. Like I know he's no longer eligible for All NBA for any of the awards, which is very unfortunate. Um, but yeah, basically all because of injury, I have him at five lower than rest. But when he's on the floor, he's insanely good because he's Luka Doncic, Luka Magic, 28.1 points per game, 8.3 rebounds per game, 7.8 assists per game. He's playing. He plays amazing when he's on the floor, which I won't say the same for Embiid. Luka is actually killing it when he's on the floor, but unfortunately injured a lot. So I have him lower than Tatum, which I don't want to admit because I'm not a Tatum fan. I agree. Who was it? Brandon Jennings, who said that Tatum is the softest Celtic in Celtic history. I agree. I agree, but
And most scoreless.
I agree with that as well. But I can't. I have to call a spade a spade. I do think he is having a great season. Uh, he is killing it for the Celtics offensively, defensively. He's still the best player on the team. He averages 27.8 points per game, 9.3 rebounds per game, 5.3 assists per game. He's killing it over there. Even though the Celtics, they've had some rocky games as of late, and Tatum is not perfect all the time. He could have some stinkers in there as well, and definitely gets carried at times by his team. He's still a great player, and I have to admit it. I can't hate 24/7. Maybe like 23 per 6 or maybe something like that, but I can't hate all the time. Number 3, I have Shai. Decent defender, very, very consistent, always averaging like 31 points per game, 5.4 rebounds, 6 assists, the leader of the best team in the West. He's killing it as always. He has an MVP argument, even though I disagree. I don't think he should be MVP. He has an argument for sure. So, yeah, shout out to Shai. With that said, he's not better than Giannis. Giannis is the number 2 best player in the league. He is the best two-way player in the league. Offensively, defensively, doesn't matter. He will carry on both ends of the floor. He averages 31.4 points per game, which is more than... No, less than Shai. Shai is number 1 in the league for points per game, and Giannis is right behind at number 2 with 31.4 points per game. Giannis is top 5 in the league for rebounds per game with 11.9 rebounds per game, and the assists is decent, 6 assists per game. But yeah, great on both sides. A very exciting player to watch with his dunks, his fast break moments, his blocking ability. It's all really cool to see. And although the Bucks aren't having the perfect season, they're doing all right, and a big reason is because of him and the chemistry that he now has with Dame. And although he is the best player on both sides of the floor, Nikola Jokic is the best player in the league, and it's a mystery when he will start slowing down, because right now he just keeps getting better and better. Right now he's scoring 30.4 points per game. That's the most in his entire career. He really has to carry offensively more than ever because of Jamal Murray not playing as great. I remember I put him on my list last time we did this, and now he's no longer on my list because of how he's fallen off. And because he fell off, Jokic has to step up even more than he already does. He is top 3 in points per game. He is top 3 in rebounds per game with 13.1 rebounds. He is top 2 with assists per game with 9.9, right behind Trae Young and ahead of many other great point guards and playmakers. He is surprisingly top 4 in steals per game with 1.8 steals per game. And also surprisingly, number 2 in 3-point percentage with 47.1% from 3, which, he doesn't shoot a lot of threes like Ant, but still, he shoots a good amount and at a very efficient rate. And yeah, he's amazing. He gets triple doubles with ease. It just comes to him, honestly. It's so easy for him offensively. He could really do no wrong. I don't know if you remember this quote from Michael Malone, but he says he prays every time Nikola Jokic is on the bench because he knows that the rest of the players can't keep the lead that Nikola made for the team. So Yeah, he has such a huge impact that if he's off the floor, the Nuggets are just a far like more inferior team. Like they're just so much worse without him, and he simply makes like basketball easier for his teammates. He gets them involved and improve their game. Like Russell Westbrook, as you mentioned, is having an amazing season this year, and a big reason why is his chemistry with Nikola Jokic. Jokic has helped him a lot this year, and they work very well together. And he's done this with other players, like Jamal Murray, like Aaron Gordon, like just helped improve these players' careers and give them like arguments on why they should be like all stars, depending on the year. So he's my number one. What are your thoughts on my list? Go.
Overall, nothing too crazy to really have to argue for. Obviously, I did not have Tatum in my top five, but like I can understand why you did have him on your top five. I mean, like, despite not being a fan of his and him being a very big cringe lord and no aura, you can't deny some of these things that this guy is really good at, unfortunately. And so him being at number four, I can understand. And then as far as the other guys go, obviously I have Luka higher than you. I know you mentioned you have him lower because of him currently being injured, and that's fair. I just felt like I had to put him high because of the the roof or like the ceiling for him, and we know his capabilities. So I know that our scale is a little bit different in that aspect where like I guess I thought a little bit more long term there versus you thought a little bit more present. But yeah, overall we have the same collection of players aside from Embiid versus Tatum. But aside from that, like aside from different sequence, I think reasonable list.
All right, cool. So those are our top 25 players in the league through halfway of the 2024-2025 season. I guess we should do a quick like review on our list. So Hoops, would you like to list your players?
Sounds good. So number 25, I got Damian Lillard. Number 24, I got Jimmy Butler. 23, Trae Young. 22, De'Aaron Fox. 21, Tyrese Maxey. 20, Tyrese Halliburton. 19, Bam Adebayo. 18, John Morant. 17, Kawhi Leonard. 16, Jaylen Brown. 15, Jalen Brunson. 14, Devin Booker. 13, Victor Wembanyama. 12, Donovan Mitchell. 11, Anthony Davis. 10, Anthony Edwards. 9, Kevin Durant. 8, Steph Curry. 7, LeBron James. 6, Jason Tatum. 5, Joel Embiid. 4, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. 3, Giannis Antetokounmpo. 2, Luka Doncic. And at number 1, Nikola Jokic. So those are my current top 25 players of the 2024-2025 season.
Now, for me, my top 25 at number 25 is Alperen Sengun. Number 24, Jalen Williams. Number 23, John Morant. Number 22, Damian Lillard. Number 21, Devin Booker. Number 20, Domantas Sabonis. Number 19, De'Aaron Fox. Number 18, LaMelo Ball. Number 17, Cade Cunningham. Number 16, Trae Young. Number 15, Paulo Banchero. Number 14, Karl Anthony Towns. Number 13, Donovan Mitchell. Number 12, Stephen Curry. Number 11, Jalen Brunson. Number 10, Anthony Edwards. Number 9, Victor Wembanyama. Number 8, LeBron James. Number 7, Anthony Davis. Number 6, Kevin Durant. Number 5, Luka Doncic. Number 4, Jason Tatum. Number 3, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. Number 2, Giannis Antetokounmpo. And number 1, the big Serbian Nikola Jokic. So those are our lists. Let us know who got the better lists. Who had the more controversial takes. I have a feeling I know who. But yeah, that is it. That's our episode. I hope you all enjoyed. If you're on YouTube, like the video, subscribe if you really enjoyed it. Leave a comment down below who had the better list. Who's in your top 5 players in the league at this current moment? Is Embiid on your list? Let us know. If you're on audio platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, make sure you are following. Make sure you leave us a 5-star rating and review. And follow our Twitter, I guess. I was gonna say socials, but I don't really use Instagram like that for our page, and I used to use TikTok heavy with for us, but with the ban, the TikToks might not be a thing anymore. But we got the shorts. The shorts do pretty well on our channel, so we'll continue doing that, and we might do more shorts more often. I have some ideas of us maybe playing more mini games more often. I'll try to make clips of podcast episodes, like our MB debate would be an interesting short, especially now that they extended the short limit time. It used to be only 1 minute max, but now it's up to 3 minutes. I think we could do more shorts from now on, because that definitely helps. So yeah, anything you want to say, Hoops, before we go?
Yeah, just per usual, thank you guys for the constant support to our channel. We greatly appreciate it. We would not be where we are today without the support from you guys. If you guys like our content, make sure to continue to like, comment, subscribe, share. Follow us on all platforms: YouTube, Spotify. TikTok might not be a thing anymore, unfortunately, so up in the air there. But yeah, point blank is make sure to continue to stay tuned, and we will find ways to keep you guys entertained in as many ways as possible. We're gonna try to integrate more fun mini games where possible as well, because these are always fun. Honestly, like when we do episodes like this where it's like top 25 players or like other mini games, I feel like it always makes the episodes more interesting, especially with our different point of views, or um, us getting creative with our minds. But thank you guys once again, and stay tuned.
Yes, stay tuned. I really appreciate you all. We kind of hit a pretty big milestone last week. I forgot to mention last week, but last week was our 50th episode, so that's pretty big. 50 episodes in, and we're not doing too bad. I feel like earning these subscribers slowly, but organically. We don't promote this at all. We just make the episodes and just let it fly and see what happens. So seeing that there are people subscribed, seeing that there are people watching our content is really cool to see. So thank you all for checking us out, enjoying the content, and yeah, I guess we'll see you all next week. Good. Bye.